So before I start, I would like to thank once again Dr. Engincan for her kind invitation. Today I'm going to be speaking to you about our research which we have conducted with my colleague Ebru Yucesan, Spatial Experience of Physical and Virtual Space, SALT Research to Virtual Archive. Technological improvements are deeply transforming production, society, and life. Architecture and interior architecture disciplines, which focus on human beings, are expected to deliver spatial solutions, to understand new living conditions, and to reveal the future by responding to technological improvements. In this study, design students who have been nourished by science, technology, and art since historical times questioned the conceptual sense of space by experiencing physical space and new media art. A virtual archive, produced as contemporary art by machine intelligence, together with a current physical library space, formed the substructure of the research. This study evaluates the semantic impression that this space concept left on students when they experienced SALT research, a physical archive within SALT Galata, a monumental building in Galata, Istanbul, and the virtual archive, a virtual art space created by Refik Anadol that questions the virtual digital space concept. Two environments produced with different specialities and designed differently in terms of equipment, scale, and formal features. The semantic differences of space experience, physical and artistic digital space concept, and students' experiences in virtual, real, and physical space were examined from students' perspectives. This study discusses participants' description of physical and virtual space in terms of meaning, material, and perception. It contributes to the current understanding of the meaning and perception of space by identifying the characteristics, semantic differences, ties, and breaks between physical space and virtual space. It is believed that the design disciplines will benefit from the influence of new technologies on creative processes that opens new horizons. Let's remember some basic terms and meanings before I start to tell you the structure of the research. Fictional spaces produced with multidisciplinary research using improving technologies are creating settings that provoke new questions and produce different answers. This comes about by broadening the horizons in virtual space studies, space concept, design, and experience. Evaluating virtual space as a layer of reality becomes a representation of architectural space that belongs to the physical world. The principal factors that form the physicality of a space, its shape and content are related to cultural, public, societal, perceptual, and intellectual codes. The space concept can be explained not only as a physical concept, but also in the sense of human interaction with a space, the feelings it elicits, perceptual factors, both in the subjective and abstract dimensions, that can be described as feelings and 3D physicality. Actually, spaces that are designed and produced for human use can be perceived in different ways and can mean different things to different people through human-space interactions. Perceiving, interpreting, and describing a space is a complex process. It can only occur when we experience it by experiencing. In studies examining the relationship and interaction between space and user, the cognitive and conceptual features used to express the effects of the space on the user, emotional responses, and semantic differentiation scale have been evaluated and improved by different researchers. Curle's studies on semantic environmental description appeared to measure and interpret the meaningfulness of the built environment and the semantic environmental description tool has also been used in simulated environments, urban places, work environments, and color spaces. In 1982, Sorte developed a similar semantic scale and hypothesized that the visual perception of environmental components in semantic evaluation scales and factor analysis can be summarized in a meaningful system of dimensions of practical use in the design process. In 1998, while Berger emphasized that we mostly gather data through the eyes and live in a world of what we see, and highlighting the eyesight in space concept. Pelasma evaluates the space concept as a synthesis of all our senses to produce a holistic result. Constitution of the space is related to one's experience of that space and how one takes an active role in this space. With the space concept becoming more common in its cyber and virtual senses, through the help of modern technologies, the human body is attempting to coalesce with spaces that are cognitively created. Although virtual reality emerged as a simulation of physical space, today there are increasing attempts to form an emotional and physical connection to such spaces. New technology is used to create new spaces, and descriptions such as virtual reality, virtual space, cyberspace, and hybrid space are articulated as new layers within the spatial memory accumulated to date. Virtual reality technologies, which can be explained as an interface between human and machine, and which describe different life systems, give one the feeling of being in a different space. Although these spaces are virtual, they can be related with the space concept, as they can be experienced and give the feeling of being somewhere. These settings, which present multidimensional spatial experiences by taking humans into a digital reality, are created using computer support and are experienced using various electronic tools. These settings in which human and machine, organic and non-organic entities meet are also important in design education as they improve creative processes related to the feature, machine-human interaction, and the space concept and its formation. A real space actually can be defined as a space in which one can perceive physically, can designate the limits. Such a space exists in physicality and can be measured geometrically. A virtual space, on the other hand, exists in a structure that is independent from the physical world. A new reality can be created by fictionalizing virtual space as a replica of reality, by copying the physical world as well as by designing a new space using the physical world as the base and taking on new features. Virtual reality creates a personal space experience that diffracts space and time. Improving technologies set these spaces which simulate reality as a layer of reality, a reflection, or representation. These cyber and virtual experiences that have emerged in new media spaces through the integration of improving technologies and art have reduced space's dependency on the physical world. Thanks to these technologies, space is divided, multiplied, shared, individualized, and socialized. Virtual reality technology changes and influences our time, dimension, and architectural perceptions, the modes of expression, and interaction models in art and architecture by taking us into a different universe that is experienced spiritually and mentally in new space creations. In this universe, reality is depicted differently, and a new universe experience is provided that nourishes the senses using technology. Haim describes virtual reality using concepts such as information density, interactivity, and immersion. And Pimentel and Teixeira describe features of virtual reality as reacting to users' movements, producing 3D real-time graphics, and creating an immersion feeling. These spaces are created with computer support and can be experienced with the help of different electronic tools. Virtual reality is a computer-human interface of an art environment connected to sensorial immersion created by computer. And these can be controlled by the user and they can respond interactively. VR technology has the potential to help the architects to visualize, explore, and interact with design in order to archive more creative, efficient, and connected process for designing. The technological developments that evolve, expand, and become cheaper blur the boundaries between physical and virtual space. In this regard, the virtual space has to be evaluated just like physical space in accordance with the user's experiences on the comfort, satisfaction, and adaptation. So back to the research, I'll first explain the physical space self-research. After losing its original function as a bank, it was refunctioned in 2006 and opened its doors in 2011 to the public in accordance with multi-layered program needs. It's located in Galata. It's in a historical province of Istanbul. The building was originally designed by the French Ottoman architect Alexandre Vallary in 1892, and it served as the Ottoman Bank General Directorate between 1892 and 1933. Behind its monumental construction, there are neoclassic and Orientalist architectural elements. Today, the building, which retains temporality and speciality, is used as a multi-program art, culture, and research center. The building symbolizes the social and cultural structure of the era in which it was built, and when it was opened for public use, it became culturally functional, refunctioned, and took on a new speciality. With its different usages, the building draws together different parts of the population, and it has become an interaction platform through its created spaces with a comprehensive auditorium for conferences, seminars, and film screenings. With an area of 410 square meters on the basement level, South Galata was designed as an exhibition area through total reconstruction except for the outer walls. Ottoman Bank Museum, which is on the same floor, is entered through the library and study space area. The museum collection consists of documents, contracts, old money, and workers' personal information. It displays documents in which the public can read about the political and sociological developments of the era. On the first floor of the building are ateliers which can be divided into multi-spaces when necessary, and they meet the institution's usage demands. The ground floor, where users are concentrated, has open wet spaces, a micro-scale bookshop, a courtyard, and silent study spaces, which are open to the public use. There are also study spaces scattered on the ground floor, mezzanine, and basement levels. Building features a library which was built in accordance with 2.0 standards with information shared through web interfaces, creating electronic resources and archives that together compose the institution's policy. According to these standards, the aim is for users to access the information in the physical or digital space. The Ottoman Bank Archive and Research Center in Salt Research was created by combining the library resources of various galleries and art centers. The topics of focus include architecture, design, city planning, and the economy. Salt Archive holds more than 40,000 books, magazines, articles, CDs, DVDs, theses, and documents that can be accessed both digitally and physically. Of all these spaces open to the public, the only place where users are required to register is the Ferit Şahenk Salon, which is located on the basement level in South Galata. About the virtual space, the Refix Anadolu's installation work, Virtual Archive, is described as new media art and was fictionalized using a data visualization method with an algorithm named curl noise. This work is a follow-up to the archive dreaming project that the artist implemented at the invitation of SALT and designed with reference to George Louis Borg's famous story, The Library of Babel. Anadolu visualized each of more than 700,000 documents in SALT Research Archive collections with algorithms that classify documents using machine intelligence. The basis of Virtual Archive is how approximately 2 million documents of the SALT archive are created and scanned, by whom the photos were taken, how users can access metadata on the documents without a search engine, and how artificial intelligence sees this. Artificial intelligence expresses this new universe as lineal according to the document's production dates or places in the archive. Smaller data repositories within this universe were obtained using the pooling method. In Archive Dream, the documents in this universe were reflected onto the surface by being transformed into contact print, and users could direct these surfaces with their handheld tablets. Google Artificial Intelligence supported Refik Anadolu to ensure the project proceed. As we said, the Virtual Archive is a follow-up to Archive Dreaming, using a similar technological substructure and produced in the basement floor rectangular exhibition salon, which locates temporary exhibitions. It is a white box actually, with a gross concrete floor and surfaces formed of white walls. It is a square bordered on 3 sides with these metal construction, as you see in this photo. And only one person may experience the space at a time, and it takes 6 minutes for each person. As the audience quiz to enter the space, actually the journey begins on a giant screen, which is invisible to the person wearing the virtual reality headset, but visible to the audience. This person cannot leave during the experience, and the rest of the salon is left empty due to exhibition's technical requirements, and the space is illuminated solely with the help of the screen. During the experience, participants selected some documents from the archive, and they can be examined using the handheld controls and are recorded and then later provided to participants as a printout from a printer, which you see at the right side of the photo next to the entrance. In Virtual Archive, the artist created a digital archive from the material belonging to Salt Galata, and which was used in archive dreaming and experienced in a completely artificial universe, independent from the physical space. The archive in the artificial universe is designed as a cylindrical shape that brings participants together with the documents in a data repository created by artificial intelligence in archive dreaming. The visual, locational, and time classifications created can also be found in this universe. Participants can approach the documents they like in the cylindrical universe by randomly directing up, down, right, left on their handheld controls. This allows them to explore the 3D data, space, and open and examine the documents. In the final minutes of the experience, participants are removed from the cylindrical universe and sent into a larger data space created by artificial intelligence, where they see the documents in the digital archive belonging to Salt Galata in a more scattered data space. In this form, the created virtual space, a new archive concept, and new learning area. And about the participants, in the 16 students from different classes of the Architecture and Interior Architecture Department of Isik University and Ayvansaray University volunteered to participate in the study. In the first stage, they experienced the physical space, and in the second stage, the virtual space. Considering their basic design education, they were asked to evaluate virtual digital space concepts and any semantic differences they experienced between the two types of space. To evaluate the conceptual effect left on users by the spaces, we use Morris's scale of scientific dimension, semantic dimension, and pragmatic dimension, which he generated for semiotic and which are used to read architecture. The cognitive and affective data taken from the spaces were physical feedback between space and subject, interaction fiction between space and subject, emotional interaction of spaces, physical and intellectual domination of spaces, formal foreseeability of spaces. The semantic scales, comprising factual definitions of space and conceptual and cognitive features. The words were selected from the media defining the artwork. These scales were used in an integrated way in the evaluation phase. And with the help of semantic scale as a semiotic scale, we asked what the factual descriptions provided by design students at the perceptual level of the virtual universe and physical world could be. Before commencing the evaluation process, participants were asked to examine the spaces in a conceptual way and write about the speciality of the archive experience, its meaning and its associations after open discussions. In this phase, students were asked for a concept map of how they defined the spaces in a conceptual and cognitive way as open-ended questions. Additionally, some of the definitions of the space in the selected literature were added to the semantic scale for students to choose from. And as another scale of semiology, pragmatic scales were used to identify students' expectations as active users of the virtual and physical spaces. Salt Research Physical Archive and Virtual Reality Experience Study, the latter comprising a representation of Salt Research Digital Archive, explained the pragmatic expectations of the virtual archive. Students visited different sections of the archive and Salt Research where thousands of resources, including the contents of the virtual archive spatial collections, were opened for students, and they were given 1 hour to experience this space in real space perception. Participants were then asked to note their experiences and observations of the SALT research space in a question booklet, which they completed in the co-working space in the center. In the final phase of the study, each student experienced the virtual archive for 6 minutes, which was determined by the artist, before receiving hard copies of the documents they had selected. After experiencing the space, participants answered the question booklet, which provides a list of adjectives about the feeling space for students to choose from. They were asked to add drawings and concepts which describe their own experiences, in addition to the concepts they had chosen from the list. Within the artificial universe created by the virtual archive, the basic design parameters of the physical space programmatic and Gestalt perception theory concepts, as well as their representation in virtual reality, were evaluated through students' drawings using a syntactic scale. The concepts to be studied through the Gestalt conception theory were the figure ground principle, closeness principle, completing principle, continuity, and simplicity principles. The basic design parameters were harmony, balance, hierarchy, rhythm, emptiness, rate, emphasis, movement, contrast, and uniqueness. In this phase, students answered questions with the basic concepts they had acquired within their university education to examine their perceptual process. The questions were related to materials of the virtual and physical spaces and their sensorial interactions in these two spaces. Participants' data from the SALT research experience. After this SALT research experience, according to their answers to open-ended questions, participants evaluated SALT research as a high-quality space and satisfying in terms of aesthetics and equipment. Strong features of the space that were mentioned were that the space is within a historical monumental building and was open for public use after being refunctioned, the use of historical equipment such as the old bank vault as spatial elements, and the atmosphere created. The pragmatic physical data of SALT research comprise the ease and transparency of reaching the documents in the physical space, that the technological tools in the space are adequate, that the equipment is ergonomic and comfortable, and that the spaces can respond to different functions which are convenient for personal and also public use. The general expressions used were neat, high spaces, indefiniteness, comfort, spaciousness, light, dim spaces, harmony, acoustic balance, mixed, and historical, gripping, transformation, aesthetic, and functional. In terms of negative feedback, participants were uncomfortable with the mixed book order, some of the ceiling heights in the mezzanine, and the narrow passings on the mezzanine floor. In terms of materials used for SALT research, participants noted marble, steel, glass, concrete, and metal. The data from the virtual archive experience, participants described as positive the feeling of physical freedom that through this experience, in the physical space, various actions are possible only by moving the body or through the senses in the virtual space. On the other hand, actions can be carried out fluidly using devices. As they experienced millions of documents within just 6 minutes and had a sense of accessing information in this new space, it showed them the difficulties of physical existence. And in the questionnaire data for the virtual space, students noted the feeling of freedom the artificial surfaces, and that the space was permeable, which they experienced as fun. It was also seen as a personal space for scanning documents, while the ability to select random documents was experienced as stimulating. The virtual archive can be defined as a data space created by classifications based on specific algorithms devised by machine intelligence. They experienced new ways of accessing information and documents that differed from their known practices, and try to define the space created and examine the space practicality, naturalness, and bodily interactions. When the archive concept was examined via the virtual archive, some of the expressions used were that the human herself was also a software code in this new method for accessing resources, that there is a disorder in the order, that it is convenient to focus on, it is isolated from the outer world, and that it is practical to access information. The conceptual expressions were feeling of infinity, multitude, space, empty, free, permeable virtual spaces, data waterfall, transparency, fun, falsehood, memory, dimness, and tranquility. In terms of negative feedback, participants experienced discomfort and dizziness in user privacy through their adaptation to the virtual reality experience. The following aspects of discomfort were noted. These are the frosty, gloomy, in the infinity, dark, far from the reality, unable to touch the documents in the archive, being alone in the experience, and difficulty finding books and the archive. Regarding the sense of materials in the digital archive, the gathered data are the resource books, log, lifeless materials, nothingness, and materials coming from it, the lack of physical materials, pixels and data, simulation, projection, and printer. Participants' data from the virtual archive experience and physical archive experience. The participants were asked comparative questions about the virtual archive and physical archive on a 7-point Likert scale. And they attempted to evaluate the virtual space similarly to the physical space in terms of sensorial and intellectual factors, and interpreted it according to the formal features of physical space. They were influenced more by the physical archive than the virtual archive in terms of its visual character. And in this content, the spatial richness, historic fabric, and variety of inner space features were thought to be influential. Participants inferred more visual features from the physical archive, but found the virtual archive to be different and new. Their interaction with the environment was more active in the intellectual sense during their physical archive experience. In the virtual archive experience, it was more disconnected from the environment. No dramatic differences were observed between the two spaces in terms of sense of orientation. In evaluating from perceptions, remarked on the formal elements of the virtual archive less than the physical archive. It is thought that in this case, the geometrical design of the physical archive, which was close to daily experience, and the virtual archive's cylindrical perspective were effective. When freedom of bodily movement was evaluated, most participants did not remark on the virtual archive. In this phase, participants were thought not to be able to interpret the whole body experience in virtual reality as they could in physical reality. When evaluating the experience of the physical environment, they received fewer cues in the virtual archive than in the physical archive. and they had an embedded introverted experience. It was observed that the physical experience was more intensive in the physical archive, where body awareness was felt more and there were more materialist concepts, while the virtual archive had more abstract and non-materialist concepts. In this sense, body awareness is thought to increase with sensorial data. Moreover, the audio experience was quite strong in the physical archive, while no embedded sound was used in the virtual archive, and the voices entering from the physical space were not seen as part of the virtual experience. They evaluated the virtual space as a separate space that was disconnected from the physical space. They classified the ability to interact with documents in the virtual archive as different and exciting, but found the experience in the physical archive more powerful. When multisensorial experience was evaluated, participants reported having a more vivid sensorial experience in the physical archive. When considering multisensorial experience and its importance in memory creation, the intellectual existence of the virtual archive and its place in the individual space experience were found to be less powerful. When examining participants' physical interactions with the spaces, the feedback they received in the physical space was found to be more effective. And according to participants, the virtual and physical archives were overly controlled at the same rate. This context and intellectual space where the body does not exist and the space wherein the body does exist were the same. Regarding the efficiency of the controls used in the virtual archive, they evaluated their power to interact with this tool as low level. The tool used to select documents in the virtual archive vibrates as tactile awareness, but in the experience process, this interaction was evaluated as weak. When semantic scales were used to evaluate the spaces and participants were asked to choose and describe their experiences over the two space using 5 concepts from the concept maps provided. The choices clustered around simulation, virtual tunnel, and cyber extension, followed by concepts like fiction data algorithm. In this evaluation, participants stand towards concepts related to the virtual archive, which was discovered to have gripped students' imaginations more as they tended towards choices that defined this archive. In this case, participants saw the virtual archive as reflecting reality. As you see here, the sketch samples after the experience, they observed to perceive space as dynamic and to reflect the speed-time concept in their drawings. And it was observed that drawings of the physical space of Salt Archive contained lines of the continuity principle, close and similar structural elements were represented, and that complex and mixed spaces were avoided. Also, the symmetrical interaction, in this case, the structural columns and the bookshelves are mentioned, and the hierarchical order in the layered spaces. The space experience through the journey of interpretation and understanding of space and architecture tells different things for each person on each occasion. Perceiving space through the physical space experience and active sense via intellectual feedback also affects virtual reality interactions. User emphasized the difference in holistic composition between the two spaces and noted that the virtual space differs from the physical space and is composed of different elements, and that the user has the perception of belonging just like in a physical space. The physical space was evaluated as satisfactory and high quality in terms of aesthetics and equipment. They describe with the phrases need high spaces, comfort, spaciousness, and etc. In contrast, participants saw the virtual archive as a new, exciting, different, and innovative experience. The bodily freedom of the virtual space experience was described as positive. Through a brief experience of the space, they overcame the difficulties of bodily existence that arose when accessing information in this new environment. They were visually influenced by the physical archive more than virtual archive. The spatial richness, historic fabric, and variety of inner space features were influential. The pragmatic data gathered for the virtual space suggested that it gave a feeling of freedom by having virtual and permeable surfaces, and that the opportunities for focusing and accessing information were effective. They frequently chose the descriptions for both spaces under the semantic scale, such as simulation, virtual, tunnel, cyber extension, fiction data, and algorithm. These choices demonstrated that virtual archive was more in the foreground and caught participants' memory creations more. The virtual archive was innovative in its use of materials derived from nothingness to describe a space in a syntactic sense, and to describe a space created by technology in a semiological sense. The semantic responses to materials in new space descriptions differ from physical space descriptions. And we have seen this in their drawings as they use the elements and principles of physical space education to depict the virtual space. And in this case, Gestalt theory and basic design principles should be considered when designing virtual environments. And as part of design educations, how these spaces will be designed in the future, how they will be used, and their suitability to design principles should also be evaluated. Art projects based on new media like virtual archive and archive dreaming actually inspire design education and designers in the sense of new space experiences. The flexibility of these art shows constantly change the description of spaces. They provide an environment for different spatial experiences, and with virtual spaces being discovered in this way, the flexibility of artistic creation will, I think, alter design education. These newly emerging descriptions enrich the results of space experience in different spaces. Machine, human, space, and future relations are examined in an interdisciplinary environment by different disciplines, and the varieties and opportunities presented by different designs have a place in architecture and also in interior architecture. In the future, the integration of physical space, virtual space, and machine intelligence into space design, and also design education, as well as the role and effect of the designer, will continue to be discussed. There will also be changes in the design process in terms of conception, and design education needs to adapt in line with these changes. Today, new representation environments present new evolutions that improve, evaluate, and interpret spatial ideas. But despite changing technologies, humans must exist somewhere, and existence is related to our sensorial, emotional, and memorial creations. In this sense, the place of human and designer will continue to be questioned in the new spaces created. Thank you for listening.